Hi, and welcome to Talking to Investors, the Impact Startup Negotiations podcast. Today, I'm speaking with Nadia and Timur of Magnotherm. We discuss things like what Elon Musk taught Nadia and Timur not to do, the secret link between company culture and productivity, and how that shifts your fundraising into higher gears, the strange connection between strict hierarchies, Korean airplane crashes, and Nokia's nosedive, and how Magnotherm solves that problem. And finally, the most effective way to build a great reputation with investors. As always, if you enjoy these interviews, please hit the bell button and subscribe to my channel. Let's go. Very happy to have you here, Timur and Nadia. Thanks for
Hi.
joining. Timur, as a CEO and co-founder, I'm sure that you've got some, your eyes on other famous and powerful CEOs. I'm going to bring somebody up here who, you might find a little bit controversial. Actually, some people do. And especially because we've got Nadia here today, who is you are the head of people and culture. Did I get that right?
Yes, that's correct.
You're at C-level, right?
Yes.
And for a company of Magnotherm size, I guess you're still a startup / moving in the direction of scale up. For you to already have a head of people and culture and to take culture very seriously, I would like to ask you, what can Elon Musk learn from you?
Well, I'm sure there's a lot that we can also learn from Elon Musk, but if we look at the controversy around him, I would say it's the thoughtfulness towards people and
Mhm.
change and taking people along for the journey,
Mhm.
and probably also values and ethics. Yeah, I think if you look at all the change that happened at Twitter,
Mhm.
values and ethics was the biggest
Mhm.
discussion point that came up, and also why people turned away from the company.
Mhm. Maybe I'm not allowed to ask these kind of slightly provocative questions. How provocative do we go?
I just laugh because it's such a complex thing, because you can have a very toxic, demanding culture and still get a lot of stuff done. So it's very hard to sometimes make the argument for being good to your people. Yeah,
Mhm.
it's a
Mhm.
big one. It's a big
Yeah.
question.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it kind of opens up a general discussion about the decisions you make of how you want to treat people and work with people,
Mhm.
alongside bottom line thinking, and
Uh,
that there isn't necessarily that one good answer, because there are many companies that get a lot done and are known to have terrible ways of how they've handled some situations with people. So it's a tricky one.
It also shows something about you, though, right? Because it's kind of like there's an underlying faith that you have that that it's worth having a wonderful corporate culture or company culture, right?
I think one thing I would definitely speak to is, with people and culture, there's sometimes these fluffy ideas. It's all about well-being.
Hmm.
And that's just not the reality of it. It is making sure everything works and that people speak up and ideally feel safe
Hmm.
and good, but it's also still going to be conflict or maybe long hours. It's more about really people feeling a part of the dialogue and checking
Hmm.
in. Um, but it's not all rainbows at all.
Hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
it's like finding a balance.
And I
Yes.
think that's a key issue, right? And if you remember back in I think it was the 80s or the 90s, for example, a lack of transparency in internal communications led to some disasters within some companies that had very strict hierarchies. For example, I think it was Korean Airlines. They had a lot more crashes and disasters than they needed to. And it had to do with people lower down in the hierarchy noticing that something wasn't going right, but being afraid to speak up. For example, the co-pilot won't tell the pilot if something's going wrong because there's that hierarchy sense, like the pilot is better than me and he must notice it,
Oh,
and if he
sure.
doesn't notice, who am I to tell him, right? Maybe I'm wrong.
Mhm.
Is that part of the whole honesty thing and the empowering people thing?
I would tie transparency in our case, and the example you gave, right, which is a culture of speaking up. One of our core principles is like the best idea wins. Like, we want everyone here to feel comfortable to share their ideas and give feedback. Sure, there's a hierarchy to decision making, but everyone counts. Like, we come from research and development. This is like, we come from a culture of engineers putting their heads together for very complex problems. Like, we need people to be engaged And we really want that to spread across all departments, right? Because now we're really focusing on go-to-market and building up and developing that branch of our company to really get our product, our technology into the field, as I would say.
Mm-hmm.
So as we change, as we grow, we want people to share what they think is not working. We need them to trust us. And for trust to work, everyone has to take accountability and also speak up to the things that are not working.
Timur, what would you say? How does the culture of speaking up affect your ability to successfully go to market?
Well, as a, let's say, leadership team or as a management team, you have to have a very good information flow. And information flow, of course, can be achieved through hierarchies, through reports, but oftentimes it's in between the lines, the information that you need. And for that, you need a good culture.
I'd like to ask some key figures about your company. For example, how many employees do you have right now?
40.
And how many did you have 12 months ago?
Must have been around 15.
So you more than doubled the number of employees in the last 12 months. That's growth. How many fundraising rounds have you done so far?
We've done 2 fundraising rounds, one a pre-seed round and a seed round.
How much money did you raise in those rounds?
A total of 6.8 million euros.
Mhm.
So both rounds combined.
You're going for the Series A round now, right?
Exactly.
Mhm.
So
Okay.
we already have traction. We already have a device that is CE certified. So we have taken big steps towards commercialization. And by the end of the year, we will then start fundraising for this Series A in order to duplicate and replicate our double door fridge.
Congratulations on that, first of all, because that also in terms of tech and GTM and all those things, that's a big step.
Yeah, it was quite a long journey. So we've been around now for almost 7 years and starting to commercialize now. So
this might be a little bit different between Magnotherm and other startups that are, for example, working on apps or things like that, is that you're working on hard tech, you're solving a fairly technologically complex problem. You're doing a lot of R&D and things like that. So it takes a bit longer to get it ready for the market, right?
yes, absolutely. I mean, that's why I would call ourselves also deep tech, because we have to really go deep into the physics, the thermodynamics of our technology. And one of the, let's say, most challenging parts is also to build up the ecosystem on the supply chain. So have people, have companies next to you who look in the same direction, who have the same vision, but also who can provide you with high quality products.
So there's a lot of work to be done to get it into the market, but once you do, first of all, it's a revolutionary product. I would say maybe in line with electric vehicles replacing combustion engine vehicles. Is that an apt comparison?
Yeah, we have drawn this comparison a couple times that you need a base technology, which is batteries, in order to build up electric vehicles. And for us, also, we need the magnetic alloy materials, which you cannot buy on the market. But we come from material science, so this is where our knowledge lies. But you have to produce them, and you don't want to produce everything in-house. So ideally, there's an industry building those magnetic alloy materials. But at the moment, there's not. And
Yeah.
so that's maybe the difference to electric vehicles, that we are not only building the machines, but we are already also or building the car, but we are also building the components.
Yes, the hurdles might be slightly greater, but once you break through those hurdles, there's a huge market. You were talking about billions of refrigeration systems. As a company, you're not going for some kind of niche market. You are going big. And in order to do that, you have to have mature processes, mature people on board, and a mature culture. That's why I asked early on also about, what can Elon Musk learn from you? I think there's a stage where companies become very, very successful, and then it's the culture that keeps them from staying up front in all the modern developments of their industry. You were talking about, I think in our pre-call, you talked about Nokia. Is that right, Timur?
Yeah, Nokia, I had it as a use case in uni actually, or as a, let's say, business case that the middle management was too afraid to give feedback to the top management.
Hmm.
So the strategy that the top management came up with was nodded off by the middle management, although they knew it's not going to work. And this is exactly what we're trying not to do, because we need everyone on board and we need everyone engaged and also convinced about the strategy. And then, if we've seen this already, then all of a sudden, ideas are coming up where you thought this would take months, and after a couple of weeks, we are so further ahead than initially thought. So I'm very much convinced that what Nadia is bringing to the table for Magnotherm is super important, and again, that's why she is part of the leadership team, because also she needs this strategic perspective on things and not just be one of the verticals where the HR processes are in place, but how can we motivate? How can we keep the people motivated? And how can we, yeah, align regularly?
Hmm.
Nadia, you can probably confirm that most of your job is solving conflicts, realigning,
Alignment is
making.
like the buzzword for me in this company.
Uh-huh. Okay. Tell
But
me a little bit about more about that. What does alignment mean for you, Nadia?
so just to build on what Timur said,
Mhm.
it's also about me giving feedback in the leadership team and like also challenging them and connecting with them. It sometimes feels like, I mean, we're all in the people business. We all have to pay attention to the people we're working with and give feedback and take feedback. But I also feel like, if other people have a responsibility to talk about, I don't know, how our numbers are developing and where we have to watch out with our budget, it's my responsibility to talk about all these people operation things and the culture and keep us all on track. And this is very collaboratively, right? People and culture only works in collaboration as a team in the leadership team. We're doing this together. I mean, I'm also coming into a pre-existing company. Like, I also have to understand where it comes from. It's just not, like it's not like it's a Nadia agenda. It's more like I'm a vessel for a lot of things and information. And then I have to see how I push things forward and also bring in my own perspective and expertise.
Hmm. Hmm.
The company's been quite flat hierarchy.
Hmm.
Flat hierarchy is cool, but it also means who's responsible for what. And now, do you get to decide or do I get to decide? And supporting team members and creating clarity. So it's people and culture. It's building the organization. It's organizational development.
Hmm.
It is the emotional component of relationship building and having the mental and emotional capacity to tune into that part of this organization and organism.
Hmm.
But it is very much strategy, organizational development, creating structures, implementing processes. It's kind of like being an architect. It
Yeah.
is. You're an architect for the organization,
Hmm.
and it's being a bit of an architect for sort of the feeling side as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
But very important point. It's everyone still has to do that work themselves. That's part of being human, right? It's a
Yeah.
very like tricky thing with people do people and culture, like these cliches of, oh, you're the well-being person, you're the party planner, and you're the person who, everyone can outsource their emotional problems to. No, no, no. Like
Hmm.
that being said, we also have an offering for our employees called Open Up. I can do a little
Hmm.
mention of that to
Okay.
support colleagues where they can talk to licensed psychologists if they, need
Mhm.
support.
Everybody knows that startups are tough environments. They're tough working environments for everybody, for the founders, for the employees. That's just the way it is. There's no way around it. And at the same time, it's important to pay attention to mental health. I've even spoken to investors who said clearly, when I talk to the founders who I'm going to invest in about their use of funds, I want them to have a certain percentage uh, designated for the mental health of the founders.
We have an offering for everyone,
Mm.
right? What I mentioned with Open Up, where it's really a confidential space where you can get fast support for people to proactively take care of their mental health.
Hmm.
And I think mental health for founders is a big, big topic, right? because no one cares as much generally as the people who initiated and lead
Yeah.
the thing.
Mm.
And it's a tricky one of how do you set a healthy example. I think the reality is that the majority of founders and leaders in startups do not have the best balance. And I don't know if it's really possible, to be
Mm.
honest.
Mm.
I think it's also accepting a couple years that are rough
Yeah,
to get
I think
things off
so.
the ground. It's the reality. There's no way of making it sound pretty. But what I do think is important is that in a leadership team in a startup, you have to be each other's rock. There needs to be that
Mm.
safe space, between each other. Or I was recently a while ago explained to me there's no such thing as a safe space, but there's safer spaces or braver spaces.
Yeah.
Having that, it's
Yeah.
a good thing for the people listening to maybe look up. Having the psychological safety in the leadership team to
Mm.
support each other.
I'm impressed, Nadia, by how you are always careful not to go into these kind of flowery idealizations, but you have a very strong sense of realism, like even just something like differentiating, maybe there's not a safe space, but a safer space. Yeah. So to me, that's really impressive. You, as the head of people and culture, if you sat down the founders and all the C-level executives and on the spot asked them to write one sentence about your startup's mission, so about Magnotherm's mission, how close to identical would those sentences be?
I think they would be pretty identical.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's pretty clear.
That
Uh, our pioneering revolution with next generation cooling, and everyone needs our product.
Timur, do you feel that too? That you'd have a very, very strong, how do you say, match between the statements that everybody at least in the C-level team would write?
We've had several discussions about it and also put our manifesto on our drinking bottles, which you can actually
Oh,
see here.
nice.
So we were trying to make everyone remember why we're here and why we're trying to do what we're doing.
Cool. And does everybody get a drinking bottle or just the C-level team?
No, everyone.
Everybody, good. I love that little finger wagging you did there, Nadia.
Yeah, everyone gets a bottle. If you visit us, you can also get a bottle.
Oh, I'm going to visit you now. Could you hold up that bottle one more time and just maybe read off what is the
Sure. The manifesto.
Mhm.
Our planet is transforming, and so must we. Every facet of life is in flux, urging us to search for novel pathways in culture, politics, society, and technology. The call for innovative solutions to shape a viable and eco-conscious future is paramount. In this great endeavor, we stand shoulder to shoulder, facing challenges with determination. Magnotherm embraces change, not just as spectators, but as pioneers. Our mission propels us to create and share the forefront of cooling technology, a paradigm shift from traditional gas vapor compression to magnetocaloric innovation is our answer, promising higher energy efficiency while preserving our precious environment. Together, let's not only adapt but thrive, fostering a legacy of positive transformation for the next generations. Magnotherm.
Wow. That's such a cool idea. And I'm sure this is, you're not the first and not the last to do something like this, but to have everybody on your team have this kind of daily reminder, or, I'm sure they're not reading it on a daily, but to just have the mission statement so present in everybody's lives. That's really valuable. Now, moving from that a little bit towards, okay, so, but why is this relevant to talking to investors, right? Would you say that investors care, especially as the startup grows and becomes more mature? Would you say that investors care or should care about a startup's culture?
An investor has many, let's say, goals that they try to achieve. I think the ultimate goal as an investor, let's say, financial investor, they want to have a financial return. I think that's it's undisputable. That's what we need to do. And that's also our conviction that we not only want to build, let's say, the most energy efficient cooling technology, but we also want to build the most price competitive cooling technology, because at the end of the day, we have the biggest impact if everyone is buying our solution, because it's a no-brainer from the price and cost perspective. And this is what investors also want to do. They want to support technology, support ideas and teams who thrive for that. And the question for me is then how can you get there? Of course, you need knowledge. You need to have money for that. You need to have a lot of things, including, for me personally, a good culture, because you could follow, let's say, the American path. Maybe it's a little bit too stretching, but hire and fire culture, and try to adapt to the externalities very quickly by adding people to the team and then also removing them. Or you can take a more long-term approach by, first of all, trying to find the right people in a slower manner, and then trying to look into the team, who can we add in, and how does it also work on a personal level, and then trying to build up something for the long term. And I think when you do that, you can achieve much more in a shorter time, because investors know they give money for a certain, and this enables us for a certain time to achieve milestones. And within this time frame, we have to be super productive, and everyone has to do the right things and working on the right things. And for that, everyone has to be an entrepreneur themselves, and feeling that and making sure that everyone keeps feeling that. That's for me the culture. So I think investors definitely should look in this space, because that's what I think makes a company in an early stage either successful or failing. As we know, looking at the team, especially on the leadership team, this is 50% of the due diligence for investors.
All right, now here's the deal. If you want to get real impact investors who are eager to fund you because you are the ideal startup for them, and who can bring you more new clients through their network, and who will give you warm intros to other impact investors, then go to perfectmatchinvestor.com. That's perfectmatchinvestor.com. Enter your email address, click on download, and get my ebook on how to eliminate the noise and find the top 5% of investors that'll supercharge your impact startup. So now that you're going for your Series A investment, you're also expecting to have an advantage, because you're taking care of people and culture in a very specific and thoughtful way. And you're also expecting that investors will look at that critically and maybe even give you some feedback on what they expect from you in terms of people and culture.
Of course, because we are also building a reputation in the investors market. And it's not like we're in seed stage and we only talk to seed investors, and then we get into Series A stage, we only talk to them. But we are, of course, meeting them already today, and already today the Series B and the private equity people that we need further down the line. And it's not only me talking to them, but it's everyone in the company going to events. So every single employee is also an ambassador for our company, and getting, let's say, a third, 3 times bounced feedback from someone in the network, hearing about Magnotherm. They do cool stuff, but also they are super motivated people. That, of course, gives us an advantage, because we already have built up this trust that we need to work with someone who gives us, hopefully, many millions of euros or dollars to build something even greater than we already have done today.
How many million are you looking for in the Series A investment?
I can give you a range. So it will be at least 10 million, maybe up to 20. But as mentioned earlier, looking at the supply chain, we are not 100% decided yet on how much we want to integrate into the value chain. And depending on that, we might raise more or less.
One thing that I found interesting is that you were talking about this, building the relationships and how much time it takes, and that you're already in touch with, Series A investors, even Series B, even private equity people, right? Now, even though, Series A is probably going to happen at the end of this year or something. Is that correct?
Yeah, we will do our product launch in October, and with that, we will fill up our sales pipeline, and this will then enable us to attract more money for the next phase, which is then scaling up production.
So it takes time, right? I think a lot of founders have this misconception that you meet an investor and then you have a few conversations and boom, there's the money. What do you think is the importance of building these relationships over a certain period of time?
Well, why is head of people and culture part of the leadership team? Because again, it's also a people's business with the investors. You need to trust each other because once they've invested, you're sitting in the same boat, and you cannot get rid of the portfolio company or the other way around from the investor so easily. So you want to be very sure that you will be able to work with them on a long-term perspective, and this needs due diligence. This needs understanding fully what kind of people are in the team, what motivates them. Are they also mentally stable enough? I mean, nobody talks about this, but this is also, of course, a factor. And what is their work ethos? Can they really turn an idea into a product or into a result? And of course, this is the best way to meet an investor and say, in 1 year's time, I'm going to be there. Then I'm going to need you, and this is what I'm going to have achieved by then. And 1 year later, you say, I did it. And then, of course, an investor will say, okay, if he or she can do this, then maybe the next phase is also possible.
Nadia, what would you say is your role in this? Are you also involved in the beginnings of the conversations with investors?
I mean, Timur really is our guy in the team when it comes to this. But what it definitely entails now in preparation for Series A is looking at how do we need to develop the company. And that's where I'm a supportive structure, so to speak, and where I need to be closely intertwined and connected and understanding like what are the needs and demands, what kind of questions are we getting, where do I need to prioritize, how we translate that into the organizational development.
Give me an example.
Any investor is going to do due diligence. They want to know, pardon my language, do these people have their shit together or not? Do they have foresight? So it's looking at the milestones and the projection of how do we need to grow as a team? Where will we make changes to the organizational structure? And what I've understood so far is no one's going to expect you to have the perfect plan. I mean, we're a startup and we also need to move fast, so we're always adapting. But people want to see that you've already thought about things and you've set a plan and you've taken things into consideration so that you can easily react to changes and you're well prepared. And I see my job in tuning in, if it's towards the tech team, and then go to market of asking the right questions and tuning in of seeing how do I grasp that information, because time is of the essence. None of us have much time. I can't sit down in peace and quiet with everyone. I also have to be a bit annoying and at the same time try to be as little time demanding as possible by listening properly. So yeah, this is
So
the reality of being a startup.
asking exactly the right kinds of questions, and sometimes even down to the, how you ask, that must be a really key skill set for you too, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
The way I try to do my job is right now we're talking about meeting structures, for example, and we have to be mindful of not too many meetings because we also have to get work done. I need information, but I also have to ensure that I'm an enabler and not a disruptor to the daily work lives of Timur and everyone else in our leadership team. So it's a matter of balance. It's also a matter of knowing when to say, okay, now I need this kind of information. And it's also about, in German, we have that expression, Mut zur Lücke, also being bold sometimes of like, okay, I don't have 100% information there, but I got to go with my gut and I have to test it out. And we also like saying here, fail fast to learn faster. And you also have to manage that. And Timur mentioned the whole thing about, mental stability. I would also say, this whole idea of grit. And you also have to be willing to look like a fool sometimes and be embarrassed because you maybe were missing information, but you can't, you have to accept that to ensure that things keep moving forward.
I think some famous scientist once said, it's great to fail because then you figured out what doesn't work.
Yes.
I can't remember who said it, but it's such a poignant little, lesson also for startups. But moving on towards one more time in the direction of thinking about investors, right? I'd like to turn it around a little bit and ask, what do you expect from an investor in terms of maybe their attitudes, culture, what they bring to the table? What would you like to see, or how do you know when when you would say, okay, this is a really good investor for us?
They need to be tough in the questions they ask. Like it needs to be clear that,
Mhm.
they're asking the tough questions where we might not always have answers to, but which really help us secure, are we looking in the right direction? Are we developing in the right direction?
Mhm.
I expect that toughness and thoroughness. And
Mhm.
at the same time, trust. Like the worst thing I could imagine is micromanagement and people coming in and telling us how we have to do everything, because that's completely disabling the culture and the leadership team.
Mhm.
So challenge us and support us with your knowledge and your expertise, because they have incredible experience and knowledge from observing other companies. And they will also know sort of, the pitfalls and red flags. Even though that being said, every startup journey, I think, is very individual, even if
Mhm.
there's some things everyone can learn. But most of all, it's also the trust for us to know what we're doing internally and how we lead.
Thanks. Timur.
First of all, I think there are different types of investors to me. So they have different things that they should bring to the table. But secondly, there are, I think, general things, and I can only add to Nadia. Trust is super important. It doesn't matter if it's a very active investor or an inactive investor. Both of them have to trust us what we do. Um, of course, we also have to communicate why we do this and what the next steps are. But when it comes to a more active investor, I totally agree. They need to be curious for what we do also on a tech level in order to ask those tough questions,
Mhm.
but then also be open-minded to, let's say, have a discussion about it, why we see things differently, and then trying to adapt also to our needs, because every company is different, especially when you look at something like what we are doing, which is slower, which is maybe on the supply chain a little bit more complex, which is on the market side also not the easiest thing. So adapting to our individual needs is super important, and of course they have to be fully convinced and enthusiast about us and making, let's say, advertisement, building our reputation and connecting us, and then on the other hand, of course, we are all here for also building something great, and we need to, let's say, be aligned on why we're doing this, and part of it, I guess, is also to enjoy the journey, because you never know how long the journey will be.
Yeah. Last question. What would you say, looking forward, are your greatest milestones that you also personally burn for? Within, I'm sure there's a lot of milestones up ahead, right? But milestones that you personally burn for within the next 6 to 12 months that you want to achieve with Magnotherm.
I have one which is really kind of hard to measure.
Mm.
But if I were to speak in like a vision, just everyone being super excited about our ambitious technological milestones,
Mm.
and just like, yeah, just being fucking excited about it and believing in one another, and like we can do this, and just that hopeful spirit. That's what's really important to me. And that would make me really, really happy to see a mobilization, yeah, and even stronger mobilization through the new goals we've set ourselves.
Cool. Thank you. Timur.
Nadia hinted a little bit on it, but we're restructuring the teams right now in order to align on this very specific goal, which is a technical goal, but also a commercial goal. And it's very ambitious. But that's what we need to do in order to be ready for Series A. And I would love to see everyone in the team achieving the goal and feeling empowered by it was a huge challenge, but together we were able to achieve the goal. And we put in a lot of work, a lot of hours, a lot of thinking, but feeling this empowerment for everyone that if I set an ambitious goal and if I sit down and execute, then I can also achieve it. This would be great, first of all, to achieve the goal with everyone, but then also everyone seeing that we can really make a change if we work together and if we set a plan and then execute on it.
You're working towards changing a huge industry.
Yeah.
Give me that feeling. Does it feel like a great weight? Does it feel like you're ready to take off? What does it feel like to be moving such a huge industry in a significantly different direction?
I mean, we're the underdog. We're not taken seriously right now by the industry. Their heads are completely somewhere else.
Mhm.
So we are completely flying under the radar, which is a super nice feeling because you can, let's say, focus on yourself and just try to optimize your own technology, your own solutions, because no one is really putting stones in the way yet, I think, and hopefully this will change because then they get scared or they get interested, let's say it more in a neutral way. And right now, I think we're just enjoying the moment of not needing to look to anyone else in the industry and just following our path.
Nadia, what does it feel like for you?
The excitement of having a challenge where, it's not always clear how things will go. I find it incredibly exhilarating. It gives me a kick.
I'd like to thank you very much for this interview and for all the insights you brought in for the founders who are listening too. It's been a great pleasure to have you on Talking to Investors today. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
Thanks for listening, and don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell button so you don't miss an episode. And please do share this podcast with any impact founders you know who might benefit from better understanding the investor mindset and from thinking about what that really means. Impact. Let's start this discussion between startup founders and investors about impact in the spaces of circularity, sustainability, and regeneration. Thank you.